Chapter 5. When We Were Hackers. Our notoriety had undoubtedly increased in college. There was an increasing number of people who had taken to hanging outside of our dorm room. All of them were asking for favors. It was only in the beginning that we did favors, but when our popularity increased, so did the risk. And we started asking people for payment if they wanted us to do something for them. It was no longer going to be free or out for favor. We were all excited and pumped up because of our newfound fame. There was no part on the campus that was inaccessible to us. We could go anywhere we wanted and people would know us. We were now the rock stars on campus. Even though we were all over the moon about our new budding status, it was around the end of the year exams that we all started to get concerned about the horde of people who were hanging outside of our room. Firstly, we had to prepare for the exams and it was distracting as hell, having 20 to 30 people chatting outside of our room. I mean, I know dormitories are not exactly quiet, but during exams when everyone is studying, it is relatively quiet. Secondly, all these groupings of people around the school nerds was sure to ring some teacher's alarm bell, and we all agreed that it was best we avoided any kind of scrutiny. So, after a lot of debates in which some very ridiculous ideas were pitched, one being that we give up hacking, we sat down to discuss this insane idea, finding that the risks were beginning to seem much higher than the resulting rewards. It was one of the logical conclusions we arrived at after reviewing our circumstances. However, that idea did not stick for very long. We all had a tremendous amount of passion for what we did, and we were not about to give it up just now. With that thought in mind, and after some more brainstorming, the best idea that we came up with was Pete and Richard would rent an apartment off campus. The benefits were adequate. We would all hang out together, and work would become much easier. Added to that, the people who wanted us to help them would not draw attention. Well, this idea would have been rejected had we tried to implement it a few months ago, at the start of our hacking career. Where would the money come from? However, that was not a hurdle anymore. We were getting paid enough that after paying the rent of the apartment, we had enough for ourselves for the entire month. However, there were also a few problems that we had to face. Although the money was good, it was not enough to pay the balance of our college tuition. Richard was in an especially tight spot. Anyways, as I was saying, it was the exam season at college. It was the end of the year, and students were lining up at our doors, asking us to alter their grades, and we were happy to comply as long as they paid us, which they were more than willing to do. While we were busy bumping and changing a grade, we were also busy hitting the books, as we wanted to ace our exams on the basis of our intellect. Pete was adamant about this, and I must say that the rest of us agreed with him, except for Richard. We were of the opinion that we would use hacking to earn money, but cheating was never going to be something that we would stoop to. We did not want to bump up our grades because we did not want to stoop that low. Richard was of the opinion that we were already stealing, so why did it matter that we do not use our skills and make our lives easier? His reasoning did make sense in a weird and twisted manner. Pete and Richard argued for a long time on this, and Pete was firm on it. He did not want his team members to use their skills in the same way that our customers were using them. It was true that the fear of getting caught made us all adhere firmly to some rules. Richard, on the other hand, was not in it because he had a passion for it. He was in it for the money. The only reason he was on the team was that he had decent brains and was Pete's friend. Other than that, there was nothing Richard had in common with us. In fact, we often wondered how the two of them had gotten to remain friends for such a long time. I privately think it was only because of Pete's nature. It was not in his nature to abandon anyone. He was not afraid to bear the burden of a relationship, even if the other person was not up to the task. It was others who abandoned Pete. He was never above giving second chances. Well, that was one of the many reasons why we all really looked up to Pete and trusted his judgment in everything. He had shown us that he was a natural leader and a good friend. He had made us trust him, and we were all ready to follow his lead. It was under Pete's leadership that we made one successful hack after the other. It was under his leadership that we had made good contacts, who were ready to help us out if we got a complex assignment that required additional resource. This was also why he had an extensive list of contacts in Russia, China, and even Israel. It was due to their timely help that we were able to accomplish the hack that Niraj's dad had specified. We had run into a few snags, mainly because we did not have enough hacking resources to pull off the gas station hack. However, Pete's contacts had come through, and we were all glad for it. Although I could tell that Pete was bothered that the Chinese had refused the money, I mean, we were not naive. We knew that the amount was not all that much. In fact, it was pathetic, especially when you took into account their next comments. The Chinese wanted to lead our salami slicing operation because they had the most input and would send the operation instructions Pete's way. Of course, all of us were very excited to hear that we would soon be moving up the ladder. However, Pete warned us to be very careful in our dealings. He wanted us to keep an eye out for relevant information. According to him, we had to look for anything that was out of sorts or seemed suspicious in any way. We were supposed to keep track of their work. In fact, his exact words were, "I want you to keep track of each and every keystroke of theirs, the Chinese, when we're working with them. Hack them before you start working on anything they ask you to work on." Judging Pete by his instructions on the matter, it seemed that he did not trust them at all. He explained to us that the Chinese were just using us. The minute we would stop being profitable to them, the people behind the scene would sell us out. According to him, their loyalty was limited to how much we could help them achieve their goal. As soon as we stopped being useful to them, they would turn on us. He reiterated this fact several times. However, such was the charisma that Pete possessed that they were still helping us protect him and his child, even after all those years. Just because he had not used the information in any way for his own gain. Loyalty breeds loyalty in the end, when all is said and done. I think that is true. Pete's contacts were loyal to him, and it was him who had inspired them to be that way. He was the one who imposed the rule that formed us into a giant community. It was him who made hacking fun for us. It was something he was passionate about to the 9th degree. And just being in his presence made you excited about the whole thing. The gas station hack was crazy and fun for all of us involved, and we were looking forward to our next big hack. We knew that it was going to be something epic, and Pete was eager to show our shadowy world what we were capable of doing. Even though in the shadowy world of the dark web, we did not know the individual in person, there was still great room for fame. He wanted to quickly establish us as the professionals among professionals. He wanted to play in the big leagues, and for that, we needed credibility. And by that, I mean we needed to pull an even bigger job. Jobs that would put us on the global radar, so to speak, with colossal bragging rights. It was around the beginning of January 2013 that we got an epic idea for a job. Well, not so much a professional job, but more like a huge prank. The thing with this prank was that it was something that was almost impossible to pull off without attracting attention. It was not going to be like the university hacks, where no one was supposed to find out that we had even been in the system. Not by our digital footprint, but by the data we had changed. We had been stealthy in more than one thing. However, here, we would only have to take care of the digital footprint and make sure that it didn't lead back to us. Otherwise, everyone in the world would know that it was a hack. There was going to be no hiding the fact from the general public. One day, we got this idea in the cafeteria. All of us were sitting and trying to come up with a good idea of what we were going to attempt as our next big hack. We were in the middle of the discussion, which was not going well because we could not come up with a single promising idea. It was perchance when the football team happened to pass by us. They had all been practicing their moves and maneuvers out on the field. So, seeing Pete, Russell decided to stop by for a chat. I had always taken Russell to be a typical jock, with all brawn and no brains. It was that day I was taught a valuable lesson not to judge a book by its cover, and also not to stereotype people. Russell sat down with a few of his team members, while the rest spread around us, covering us from every direction. The move was so well organized that it almost looked natural. It was only after Russell started steering the conversation to the topic of hacks that I realized that the rest of the football team was still sitting around us on all the nearby tables and talking loudly among themselves so that the conversation happening on the table smack in the middle had no chance of being overheard. Pete noticed this and was looking at Russell in admiration. The expression on Pete's face told that, just like me, he was also impressed with Russell and the thought he had put into this seemingly casual-looking effort. "Hey, look, I realize it's not fair of me to ask you this since it's your show. I was wondering when you were going to go big on your thing." "What do you mean by go big?" Pete inquired. I think Pete was just buying time to think what Russell was up to. This was how Pete stayed on top. He would think that everyone warranted suspicion until it was proven otherwise. That showed just how we had managed to elude everyone for so long. By the way, I appreciate the subtlety, Russell. It does make this conversation a little more reliable. That is why I did it, man. I want you to know that you can rely on us. On me. I came out to talk to you about something, and that is why I wanted to know about your schedule. If you're finding you have a little bit more time on your hands than you want, I got a proposal for you. Pete's eyebrows were touching his hairline at this point. I could tell he was intrigued, to say the least. He wanted to know why Russell was playing all the cloak and dagger stuff, but he didn't want to ask him outright. He wanted Russell to come to the point in his own time. That would give Pete time to formulate his reactions. Anyways, what Russell said next was something that none of us was expecting. I will get straight to the point. What do you think about a Super Bowl blackout? All of us looked at each other in shock. What Russell was proposing sounded like madness. He wanted us to hack and cause a blackout during the Super Bowl. However, as the initial shock abated, our expressions turned to delight. I mean, this was exactly the sort of thing we had been trying to figure out for the past week. And here was Jock Russell handing us the perfect idea. Pete, who had been looking excited and eager at the prospect of a big hack that would utilize all our skills, was now looking at Russell with a frown. Hey man, I really appreciate the vote of confidence that you think that we could pull this off. But before I can say that we will or will not do it, I want to know why you want it to happen. Plainly put, bro, what's in it for you? Russell looked askance at Pete. Dude, don't tell me you've not heard the chatter about the bets that are being placed on the outcome of the match. They are huge, and we could all make a buttload if we just pool our resources together. We can tell you where to place the bets, and you and your team can try to hedge the odds in our favor. That's simple. Even though Pete was a suspicious guy, he trusted Russell, and the motivation was all in the clear now. He didn't mention the fact to Russell, but we were also keeping an eye on the bets, yet we didn't think anything of it until now. The only reason it had even crossed our radar was that the bets were a rage on the dark web for the last couple of weeks. I mean, I had to hand it to Russell at that time. He did come up with a great idea, something that all of us had missed. We discussed a little more about the ways we could place the bets and who to bet on, but the important bit was that we had finally gotten something to do. That was what we cared about the most. The thing that had gotten us so excited was that this would put us right on the map among elite hackers, and we would be famous for it if we could pull it off without a hitch. How would the plan unfold? We first had to hack into the local utility company system to see the voltage supply to the stadium, then hack into the stadium network and manipulate the relay settings. Once completed, we had to figure out a fail-proof way of making it extremely difficult for the authorities to get back in and track it back to us once the team got out. This step would ensure the blackout would hold fast and steady for a while. For how long we could enforce the outage and keep the authorities out was the whole question, because the success or failure of our objectives depended on the duration. By our objectives, I mean if we wanted to be known, we would have to keep them out for a duration that mattered. With that thought in mind, all of us got to practice. And our first test run was not something that made us very hopeful, as far as logical access was concerned. The first time we hacked, Richard was able to access the local utility network and created an admin account. However, it was quickly discovered and deleted by the security administrator of the facility. Well, that was very discouraging for us. However, we had not become hackers because we were thwarted by discouraging results. In fact, we wore this helmet for the very reason that if we encountered an obstacle, we would try to solve it no matter how many times we failed. The more we failed, the harder we would try. It was that inherent drive to solve puzzles, no matter what, that had joined us together in the first place. Tosh and Logic were working as Pete's backup, and I could see they were all getting to a point where they were becoming so engrossed with the puzzle that the only way they would leave it was either they solved it or passed out from exhaustion. After keeping at it for the whole next week, they were finally able to access the stadium network and change the setting of the electrical relay, making the timing last for at least 20 minutes. When Russell came over next to find out the progress, Pete told him that we'd got the time up to 20 minutes, give or take a few minutes. He also told him that on the day of the game, anything could happen, so the timing might vary, and we would try to keep it around the 20-minute mark. However, there was no guarantee. Russell told Pete that it was good enough that even if it could make 20 minutes, it was going to be ideal, and that we might just make a lot of money out of it. Now that we were going ahead with the plan, a rumor had started going around campus that there was going to be a blackout at the Super Bowl. Even though we were popular hackers, people did not associate it with us, as we were only part-time hackers. And this was in their minds a big league thing. The thing was that it was still the year 2013, and people were not yet as savvy about computers and hacking as they are nowadays. In fact, most people were betting that the blackout was not going to happen at all, and that it was all a rumor, created to attract hype and attention to the Super Bowl, if the 49ers were losing against the Ravens. It was finally the day. Super Bowl 47, Ravens versus 49ers. Our plan was to do the blackout during halftime because we were certain that the 49ers were going to crush the Ravens. Why? Their secret weapon, Colin Kaepernick, was on a winning streak throughout the season and was unstoppable. What we did not take into account was Ray Lewis and Jacoby Jones' skills and athleticism. The 49ers were being dominated by the Ravens early on, which was unexpected. By the start of the third quarter, the score showed Ravens at 28 and 49ers at 6. Halftime was long past. We were all absorbed into the game, sitting in front of the TV. Everyone was stunned except Sosh, who was trying to find videos of Beyoncé on his laptop after watching her stunning halftime performance. It was then the call came in from Russell for what we had agreed on. Pete and his team, that is us, were not to initiate the blackout until Russell and the other players analyzed the situation and thought that we needed the blackout to change mood of the game. Well, that was when logic was up. It was time for him to do his magic. Some said it was impossible, but we knew better, because he had tested the blackout 3 times in the past 2 weeks, and it had worked flawlessly without anyone maintaining the stadium facility knowing. After Logic had done his thing, it was up to Tosh and Pete to make sure that the authorities stayed locked out of the system for as long as they could manage it without getting caught. Logic did his magic, and every TV screen in the country went pitch black, with only sound coming out of the speakers. The Super Bowl 47 was officially blacked out. You could hear the screams and cheers, not from the Super Bowl on TV, but from the people on campus who were watching the game in their dorms. The incident managed to shock everyone there, members of the football team, cheerleaders, and everyone else who was either cheering or horrified. All of us were in our apartment at that time, sitting on the couch in front of the TV when it happened. Even though we knew it was coming, we were all very surprised. All of us gasped out loud. After the initial shock was over, we all started jumping, cheering, hugging, and clapping Logic on his back. We were so overwhelmed, especially Logic, who was red-faced and was muttering that it was just something that came naturally to him and that it was no big deal. Although, from his expressions, you could tell that he was also pleased with himself, and the praise that we were heaping on him, the grin did not leave his face all night long. That night, around 80,000 people were at the Super Bowl 47, and 1.3 million people nationwide were watching it on TV. Not a single one of them knew that the hack was planned weeks ago. There is one thing I can say. If more than 2 people know something, it is no longer a secret. Even though Russell had complete control over his team, the cheerleading squad also knew that the hack was planned, as Russell's girlfriend was the head cheerleader, and another guy on the football team also had a cheerleader girlfriend, so the cheerleading squad was also in on the secret. Unfortunately, the other guy's girlfriend, who was a cheerleader, let it slip in front of her dad, who was also the college's computer science professor, that there were a bunch of guys on campus who were great with computers and planning a blackout during the Super Bowl. When his daughter mentioned it in front of him, Professor Atkins knew exactly who she was talking about. He was familiar and proud of his students, who showed extraordinary talent in his class. So when he witnessed the blackout for himself, he knew that his daughter had been telling the truth. The professor, who was hosting a Super Bowl party at his residence, excused himself from the party and went to his study. There he took out his cell phone and made a call. "Hello, this is Agent Griffith, FBI Cybercrime Division." That was the response he got from the other end. The call that was made that night was of a secret nature. The sharing of information Professor Atkins had come across had to be given to the right people. Whatever happened afterwards was a direct result of this single phone call. Please pick up the second book, Rise of the CEOs and We Are Back, from the Dark Cumulus series at your nearest bookstore or on Amazon.com.